I'm not a surgeon, but I'm going to do some sweater surgery. Well, they're not unsolicited. I'm soliciting your opinions. Hello everyone, welcome back to studyknits. My name is Allie. If you're new here, I'm a fourth year medical student. I'm living in the US and I love knitting. This is podcast number 8. I feel like it's been a while since I recorded a podcast, but then I checked and it actually hasn't been that long. It's been like 2 weeks since I posted a podcast. When I recorded my last podcast 2 weeks ago, I was close to finishing a lot of my whips. And so I finished almost all of them. So I have a lot to talk about in this one. Time has been flying, I feel like, in like my personal life and my knitting life, which is crazy. I've just been like going through a lot of projects and then my rotation is like flying by. Crazy. I'm still in New York, beautiful New York, love it here. Yeah, that's like the only life update I have. I will tell you, I don't know if you can see it here. I don't think you can. I clipped my mic to my vest today. I normally just clip it on my tripod and then point it in my general direction. But today I thought I would clip it on my vest. I don't know if you can see it or not. I tried to make it so you couldn't see it because it has this like green light that was kind of distracting when I was filming my like test shots. So let me know if there's any issue with sound, if it sounds better or worse. I don't know. I've always been scared to clip it to my knits before because I'm worried that it's gonna like make a hole. Actually separately, I do need to invest in a new mic at some point. This is like a cheap one from Amazon that works fine, but every like 30 seconds or so, it'll have like little moments where it kind of freaks out and then it won't record that well and the sound gets really bad. And like really distracting, and I don't like that. But it was really cheap, so I can look past it. So if you have any good mic recommendations, please let me know. I'm looking for a new one. I follow like a normal podcast style where I talk about finished objects. I believe I have 4 to talk about today. I have 4 finished objects to talk about, 3 whips to talk about, and I don't have any acquisitions, but I do have some future plans, and I do need some help deciding between what project to make for my future plans. So we'll just jump right in, I guess. Well, let me tell you about what I'm wearing first. This is my Simper Slipover V-neck by the Knit Pearl Girl. I love this pattern. I have 2 of them. This one is my fall Simper Slipover V-neck, and I also have a spring Simper Slipover V-neck that is pink. This one is knit with wool of the Andes, tweed in sarsaparilla. Oh my god, I can't even remember what I made this. I made this over the summer, like 2 summers ago, I think 2 or 3 summers ago I made this, which is so funny that I knit this like wool and mohair vest in the summer. It's because I wanted a good travel project. I didn't have a travel project. Yeah, so this is knit with Knit Picks wool of the Andes tweed in sarsaparilla heather, and it's held with knitting for olive soft silk mohair in the color dark cognac. I absolutely love this vest. My gauge is definitely off. I didn't swatch beforehand, but I love this. I love this vest. I wear it all the time. It's like the quintessential fall vest. It feels like fall here now. It's like 40s, 50s, 60s, and it's getting chilly, and so it's time to wear my fall knits. I'm so excited. I love this vest. I can't say enough good things about this vest. I would love to make more of them. I was thinking about it because I have a Sophie shawl, also knit in wool of the Indies tweed in the same color in sarsaparilla heather, and it's one of my favorite accessory items to wear. It's in my storage unit and I couldn't find it when I was going through my storage unit looking for my fall knits. So I'm gonna have to go this season without my Sophie shawl, which is really sad, but I'll get over it. Like, I'll be fine. It's just sad. Anyways, so that is like one of my favorite yarns that I've ever worked with. I love wool of the Andes, which we'll get into later in the video. I love wool of the Andes, but this color specifically is just such a nice, like a heathered tweed, warm brown with some orange. I love it. I love this yarn. I love this sweater, but we're not here to talk about projects that I finished years ago. We're here to talk about things that I've recently finished. So I had an interview this morning, so I'm also like already tired of talking to the camera, but I didn't really feel like I felt like doing something productive today, but not like uber productive. So I was like, well, let me just sit and talk to a camera some more. So I'm already like tired, a little worn out from talking. So yeah, finished objects. I'll start with most exciting. No, I'm just gonna go in whatever order I want. This is my finished capital V vest by Rosa Pomar, knit in Surella yarn, classic DK, in the color Ivy from their Taylor Swift, their Eras collection part 1. Love it. I just accidentally stumbled across this yarn on an Instagram sale and bought it last summer, so I'm very happy to have used it. One of my favorite Taylor Swift songs, and also this gorgeous, gorgeous green. I knit the size 3, and I used a US 6 needle. I actually didn't remeasure my gauge, but I think my gauge was too big. Was worried about, in my last video, the amount of yarn that I would have left, and I had a pretty decent amount of yarn. It was hard to gauge at the end though, because you basically need to, right, as with all patterns, you finish, as with all v-necks, or at least you finish the decreases and then you work stockinette and then you work X number rows of rib. And I didn't want to run out of yarn on the rib, so I basically worked less rounds of stockinette than suggested in the pattern, and then worked more rounds of rib than were suggested in the pattern, just to give it a little bit more length. It grew a ton with blocking. Wait, let me just measure my gauge really fast, because it got a lot bigger with blocking. I'm not complaining. I love the fit. 17. I had 17 stitches in 10 centimeters. And the suggested was, 16 and a half stitches in 10 centimeters. Look at me. And I didn't even gauge swatch for this. I worked a couple of rows and measured, and I was like, looks good. I have yet to wear this. I was going to wear this while recording the video today, but I decided to wear this instead so that I could hold this up and talk about it. I've yet to wear this out and about. I think I finished it last weekend. I think I finished it last weekend or 2 weekends ago. I'm really not sure. I have no concept of time right now. But I tried it on. I love the fit. I would definitely wear it with the shirt that I'm wearing now. I need to invest in a little bit more, like some base turtleneck layers to wear this under a turtleneck. So I have a couple of turtlenecks now that I can wear, but I don't see myself wearing this top with any of them. I did try it on without a shirt underneath, and I think it's a bit too deep of a V for me to get away with wearing it as just a shirt. Maybe in the summer with like a little bralette, perhaps, but definitely not a transitional piece to wear without a shirt underneath. This knit up pretty quickly because of the big V. The only thing, so where can you see it best? Oh, you can see it best on the back. This gorgeous yarn. Ooh. This gorgeous yarn. I hope you can see. You can see where I switched skeins, because I did not alternate skeins like I know you're supposed to do when you're working with hand-dyed yarn. And I did not. I chose not to because I was like, it's a vest. It's not that deep. I don't feel like figuring out how to do it right now. And so I'm not bothered by the fact that they're too different, that they look kind of different. Because you can tell, if I hold it up like this, you can tell that I'm holding it up upside down, but the top is a lot darker than the bottom. It doesn't bother me at all because this is just a vest. You may or may not remember, I bought more yarn from Surella Yarn from the part 2 of the Eras collection. And I plan on making some sweaters. So this is the first time I'll be using hand-dyed yarn to make a sweater, like a big garment. And I know I need to alternate skeins. I've been looking online how to do it, and I basically can't figure out the best way to do it, to alternate like the whole time. And I've heard people do different things with sleeves. So if you are an experienced knitter and you have a lot of experience knitting sweaters with hand-dyed yarn, I would love to know what you do to avoid the line between different skeins. If you alternate the whole time, only half the skein, and what you do for sleeves, I would love your advice on what to do with it, because I have those projects coming up and I don't want to, knowing me, I'll just like rush into it and do whatever I feel like at the moment. So I would love to start preparing now for it. So would love your advice if you have any. Oh my gosh, I forgot to go through things that I learned. I literally forgot to talk about things that I learned in the beginning. I knew I was missing something. I'm just like out of it, and I didn't write down my thoughts for this like I normally do. So we're going to do it now. So, again, usually I also in the intro talk about things that I've learned recently since I'm a new-ish knitter. My technical skills, good. Working knowledge, bad. So I usually talk about things that I've learned since I filmed the last podcast, and I have an ending on the saga with the 3mm needle, in case you were wondering. If you remember, I've basically been confused and been talking about it in the past couple of videos about how a lot of Danish, maybe it's just Danish, a lot of Scandinavian knitters, when they are writing out patterns, they will list a US 3 needle as a 3mm needle, which is not the proper conversion. A 3mm needle is US 2.5, and a US 3 needle is a 3.25mm needle. So US 3 does not equal 3mm. However, I've seen a couple of patterns where they list the needle to use as US 3mm needle. So I've been wondering why. I got so many comments on my last video giving me so much clarity and closure. Thank God. Apparently, the 3.25mm needle is a relatively new needle size. It like historically used to be that you would have 2.5mm, 3mm, 3.5mm. So the 3mm needle always used to be the US 3 needle. Until I guess at some point they created the 3.25mm needle. A lot of older knitting needle sets and a lot of old needles do not come in 3.25. So that is why people use US 3 and 3mm interchangeably. And as always, use the needle that gives you gauge. Incredible closure, because I know it was bugging me, it was bugging a lot of people. So I'm happy to finish that one up. Tie a nice bow around it, call it a day. You'll never hear me talk about it again. I know a lot of you are like, thank God. I never cared. I cared a lot. Back to my finished objects. Next up, this it's actually so funny. This is how weird the time has been passing. I had to look at my last released podcast to see if I talked about this as a finished object or not, because I couldn't remember when I finished it, and I only finished it like a week and a half ago. I don't know what's going on. Anyways, this is my finished Berlin scarf. This is a pattern by Suzanne Muller. Absolutely gorgeous. It's only a one size pattern. It's just a big old scarf. I used Drops Melody, which is a brushed alpaca. This is the color beige. It is, as you can see, beige. I used a 6.5mm needle for this. I used almost exactly 6 skeins of yarn for this. This is the second one that I've made. I made another one in pearl gray or light gray. Can't remember. I made another one earlier in the year. I used the same needle. I also used 6 skeins of yarn. These are Christmas gifts for my boyfriend's 2 youngest sisters. And this is just such a fun thing to make. It's so easy to make and so stylish too. I was in Uniqlo earlier this week and I just saw a bunch of scarves that looked like this. And I was like, I can make that for 3 times the cost and only a month of labor. So joke's on you. The fringes are definitely time consuming. As you can imagine, they're double knit. I wove in all my ends. I did weave my ends in, but I have not trimmed them yet. So she's looking a little ratty, a little mangled at the end, but overall looking very cute. When I bought this Drops Melody to make these 2 Christmas presents, I also bought some for myself in this kind of soft sea green turquoisey color that I eventually will make into, oh, there it is. I can see the yarn right there. That I eventually will make into one for myself. I don't know when that'll happen. Hopefully this year, we'll see. Since I don't have my Sophie's shawl with me, I will need some kind of scarf or something for the winter. So maybe it'll be like a knit of necessity. Like I'll just need a scarf and then I'll just whip it up really fast. I made the first one I made in a week. I brought it with me to visit my boyfriend for a week and I finished the whole scarf there. So the first one took me about a week of being a monogamous knitter. This one took much longer because I put it aside for summer and then I picked it back up. But overall, love. I will say this yarn sheds like crazy. I was knitting a bit before going into the hospital one day for a rotation, and I had my scrubs on, and I was knitting this with my scrubs on, and I stood up, and I had navy blue scrubs, and I had so many fibers all over my scrubs, and I had to like slowly pick them all off. And then I got to the hospital, and there was still there. I could still see a bunch of fibers on me throughout. It was a 12-hour shift. At the end of the 12-hour shift, there were still fibers on me. So it does shed quite a bit. I don't know if it'll shed. I have not blocked this yet. I have not blocked the other one yet. I don't know if it will continue to shed. The recommended yarn for this is Sadness Garn Borsted Alpaca, which is, I mean, Drops is a relatively inexpensive brand, so the Sadness Garn is a lot more expensive than this one. I would be very interested to compare the shedding levels between the two, especially if this one sheds while wearing. If this sheds while wearing, that might be a deal breaker for me using this yarn as a substitute for the more expensive Sadness Garn Brushed Alpaca. But there's really nothing else to say about this. It's just fun. It's easy for 90% of the time until you have to do the fringes, and then it's time consuming. But I absolutely love the way this turned out, and I cannot wait to gift these, and I also cannot wait to make my own and start wearing it. Next, this is my finished Oslo hat mohair edition for myself, for me. I used some hand-dyed yarn from Long Dog Yarn. I used their merino sock yarn in the color Only Mostly Dead from the Princess Bride collection. Love that. Love the color, gorgeous color, and I love that whole scene from the Princess Bride. I love the Princess Bride, so I had to buy yarn from her collection, obviously. And then I held it with a strand of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in what I think is dark ochre. Is that what I decided on? I took the label off the yarn after I bought it, and I couldn't find any proof of myself purchasing it, so I don't know what color it is. Ochre brown. So I think it's ochre brown, but I'm not sure. Either way, I held them together. I don't know if it's gonna, I think the lighting's gonna do it justice. Yeah, lighting's gonna do it justice. It is gorgeous. I am so excited. I made the adult size medium, and I used a 3mm needle / US 2.5 needle for this. It is, I actually have not tried this on since blocking, but I am absolutely obsessed with this. I love it. Let me just try it on. I hope it doesn't mess up my hair. Yeah, so it fits perfectly. I'm obsessed. And I also talked about it in my last video, but I'm growing my hair out. This is the first time that my hair's been kind of long recently. It's been kind of like a bob for the past couple of years, for the past like really long time. And I haven't wanted to wear hats as like accessories. I've worn them to keep myself warm, but I haven't wanted to wear them as accessories, as like a vibe kind of thing. And since my hair is longer, I think I'll like it a lot more. I just never liked the way I looked with my short hair and a hat. So I'm hoping with long hair and a hat, it'll look nice. I hope it looks nice right now. It feels really nice. It feels like it fits perfectly. Huge fan. Let me take it off though. I brought this to a conference with me. Also hats are the perfect things for me to take to conference because I don't even have to look at them. I just knit in a circle and stockinette, and then I measure every like hour or so and call it a day. So I brought this to a conference with me. I've previously knit one. I knit one in the size adult small, and it's just too small for my head. The adult small one, I used exactly one skein or one ball of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair. Exactly one. Like I had like this much left over, not much at all. So I just like didn't even think, it didn't even cross my mind that I'm making the size medium. I need more yarn. I need more mohair. I didn't even think about that. So I bring it to a conference and I'm knitting, and I realize like an hour into the conference, I'm like, I didn't bring any extra mohair with me. I don't have any extra of this mohair. I only have one skein of the Knitting for Olive in dark ochre, and I think it's dark ochre, or no, ochre brown. So then I was like, well, I'm not going to stop knitting my hat at this conference. What am I going to do? Just sit there and listen? So I was like, I'm not going to stop knitting my hat. I'm also not going to buy more yarn. I knew I wasn't going to buy more mohair. I had too much mohair anyways, and I didn't want any left over. So what I've done in the past with Oslo hats is basically just like not really giving away the instructions. Okay, pity. So you work like this, but it unfolds, and this part right here is folded and knit in on itself. So right, you basically work, right, you work a ton, and then you knit it together, and it makes it folded. Then you keep knitting. Basically, from like here down never sees the light of day. So I used Oslo hats as sort of a scrappy yarn project in the sense that everything from here up and here down is in the color that I want it to be. And then I use scrap yarn in the middle that never sees the light of day as a way to use up scraps. So I did that with this one, except I just worked a little bit without mohair. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. And then it's also really cool because then you can see what the yarn looks like without the mohair held with it. And you can compare them. And so I do kind of like that I can now see just the only mostly dyed without the mohair. Because I do feel like the mohair does kind of overshadow it a little bit. But I still love the way it looks. So the only thing is that I thought that I'd calculated it out in the past that when making like a scrappy Oslo hat, when you first cast on and the first half of the folded brim that you work is the part that is facing the outside, and then the second half is the part that's facing the inside. So I worked a bit and then was like, oh, well, the inside is, or the second half of the brim is what's going to be inside. But then I started working the rest of the pattern and I quickly realized that that was not the case and that I had basically messed up. So then I had to like tweak the pattern and the part where you fold it a bit to make it so that the part that I needed to be on the outside was going to be on the outside. So if you're considering doing a scrappy Oslo hat, just know that when you cast on and work, the first half of the folded brim that you work is what is going to be on the inside, and the second half is what is going to be on the outside. Or you can just do what I did and just tweak the folding, the part where you fold it over, to make it work for you. But let's see, how much yarn did I use? Well, I obviously used a whole skein. I obviously used a whole skein of knitting for olive. I actually had some left over. Yeah, I had like 2 grams left over of the knitting for olive, soft silk mohair, whatever. And I used 54 grams of this fingering yarn. So I still have like 40 grams left over. I don't really know what I'm going to do with it, but I'll come up with something at some point. Maybe I'll make some shorty socks or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. That's a later problem. I'm not pressed about it right now. But that is my Oslo hat mohair edition for myself that I hope to get a lot of wear out of this year. It's kind of goes together. Okay, last finished object. I literally finished this morning. I haven't blocked it. I did try it on. I did weave in the ends, kind of. No, that's a lie, I haven't. Okay. Anyways, sorry. This is the Jew headband by November Knits, but I can't remember her real name. And Fiskum Sundi. Perfect little scrappy yarn project. I used my leftover yarn from actually my spring Semper Slipover. I use Drops Flora in magenta and Drops Kid Silk in pink. And this took me probably a total of 3 hours to make. So fast, as you can imagine. It is just like a little folded headband. I don't think I needed to pay however much money the pattern was to make this, but I like this designer. I like supporting small designers, so I was like, I'll pay however much money just to purchase this pattern and have a little bit of guidance. You just knit and then you seam it, and that's it. My seam is definitely too tight. There's absolutely no give to it. I don't know if it was my seam or my cast off, probably both if we're being honest. It feels uncomfortable to put on and take off, but when it's sitting on my head, I think because the seam is so tight, it does not go anywhere. And it doesn't feel tight on my head when I tried it on after finishing it. So I'm not going to redo my seam or my cast off. I'm just going to call it a day. I used 28 grams of Drops Flora and 11 grams of mohair. So this is the perfect like waist yarn project. This is like not even a full skein of either, not even a half skein. This is perfect. Perfect scrappy yarn project. And then also similar vibe as the Oslo hat, where the inside never sees the light of day. So if you wanted to use this as, if you wanted to make the inside with scrap yarn and the outside with whatever yarn color you want, I think go for it. I'm excited to block this. My stitches are quite uneven because I used a 5mm needle on this with a fingering and mohair held together, so it's quite gapey. I'm hoping that with blocking it maybe looks a little more even. But overall, what a speedy pattern. What size did I make? I made adult medium / large. If you are out there looking for a scrappy project or like a good thing to gift people, this little ear warmer / headband, so fast to make. I didn't even time myself. I'm just guessing 3 hours, probably less. So speedy. So speedy. Okay. That's it for my finished objects. Lots of accessories. Lots of accessories. We're talking about accessories. We'll get into whips, and I'll tell you about my only accessory whip. Also, my only whip that's for me, which is kind of funny. Well, I mean, I just finished this like this morning a couple hours ago, so that was for me. This is my one of my basic socken lights that I finished, which is incredible. If you know me, sock knitting is hard for me. I'm trying to become more of a sock knitter, so the fact that I've finished a sock is incredible. This is a pattern by Suzanne Muller. I'm knitting this using Surella yarn, their nylon sock, in their one day only sale for the Super Bowl from the Chiefs sock set. It was called In My Sock Era. So it's this cool red with the nice yellow Go Chiefs, and then I added the little white stripe right there, which is some leftover knitting for olive merino to give it the cool look. I love the way this looks. This is the best fitting sock I have ever finished for myself. It is not perfect. It is still a little big. I'm still figuring out my own like sock sizing. I don't think this was necessarily the best sock. I'm talking about it like it's a finished object because it basically is. Because I finished this one, I still have the other one to go through. So I will actually just wait to talk about fit and sizing and everything until I finish the other sock. But the other sock I'm about here on. I just cast it on because these are toe up, which is fun. I think I messed up. It's a shadow wrap heel. Definitely messed up on it, but I don't care because they're for me. I knit on these, surprisingly enough. I think last time I filmed, I was like here on it, and I was using DPNs. I just thought I would try out DPNs, and they were all right. It felt very iconic to knit with them. I felt like a true knitter. I felt like that's what people think knitters are. I don't know. It felt iconic. I felt cool using them. I did not feel efficient and I wasn't really having a great time. So I switched back to Magic Loop and I had so much more fun and I felt like more speedy and I just enjoyed it a lot more. So I'm a Magic Loop girl. I'll never not be a Magic Loop girl as hard as I try. The only thing I could see, actually, no. I know I would use DPNs to do color work, like stranded color work on a sock. I know 100% that I would use DPNs for that because I find the tension which I've talked about this before, I find the tension in Magic Loop with stranded color work to be really, really difficult for me. I just find it really, really difficult and it ends up looking weird and I think it would be a little bit less, I think it would be easier with DPNs. Granted, I have not tried it, but I think it would be easier. I don't really have a problem with tension in Magic Loop working one color. I don't feel like there's I don't get like weird bumps or anything. Like I feel like my tension's really good with Magic Loop in a solid color, just not stranded color work. So went back to Magic Loop. The hospital that I'm at now they don't provide parking, so you street park. And it doesn't make sense for me to take public transit. It's just not an efficient way for me to get there. So I show up, basically, I get there like an hour early. So that I give myself time to find parking. And most of the time, I find parking very, very early. So then I sit and I knit on my sock and listen to my audiobook until it's time for me to get out of my car and go to the hospital. So I knit basically like 90% of this sock in my car when I got to the hospital early. It, it was an incredible pastime, and it was honestly really nice. It gave me some time to like decompress and relax before going into the hospital, which was nice. Drink my coffee, knit on my sock, listen to my audiobook, and call it a day. So I don't think I'll finish the other sock this week. This is the last week of my rotation. That's it. And I will talk about like fit and everything later. I feel like I spent too much time talking about this sock and just rambling about this sock. But I will talk about fit and everything once I finish the other sock. And then sad news, my rift sweater. We left off on the rift sweater, which I'm not going to go through the whole thing again. But this is basically my second time making this. It's for my boyfriend. And I finished the front, I finished the whole body, seamed it, seamed the shoulders. It's gorgeous. Oh, let me tell you. This is the Rift sweater by Jared Flood from Brooklyn Tweed. This is knit using Hip Knit Shop Pop Merino in the color Milk and Cookies. And I'm using a 5mm needle for this. Is that right? Yes, I'm using a 5mm needle for this. I'm making the size 47 1/4. It's the third size. And it's for my boyfriend. So I finished front and back. I finished the first sleeve. Very exciting. Finished the first sleeve, and then I was going to try to finish the second sleeve. So I was like, can I do the whole second sleeve in a day? Ran out of yarn. Ran out of yarn. This sweater does not want to be finished. This sweater wants to be a whip forever. So if you can see where I ran out of yarn, if we hold the sleeves up together, like here, I don't have much left. I don't really want to buy another ball of yarn for this because it ships from Denmark, I believe. I don't really want to pay for shipping. I don't want to deal with dye lots because I bought this yarn, I want to say 2 years ago. There's no way it's going to be the same dye lot. So what I decided to do is I'm going to do some sweater surgery. I'm not a surgeon, but I'm going to do some sweater surgery. I don't want to be a surgeon, but I'm going to have to become one. Tomorrow is when I'm doing it. I've been hyping myself up for it all week because basically I tried this sweater on. My boyfriend and I are long distance, so he cannot try it on. So I tried the sweater on just the body and held it up and was looking at it. And we were on FaceTime and he was like, that looks really long. And then I was like, it does look long, but this has been taking me a really long time, so you'll get over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in 2 lifelines and cut and unravel this middle section here. Use that to finish this sleeve and then graft them back together. It's going to be an ordeal because there is this side ribbing here. I have Googled, there is a way to graft purl stitches. So I'm going to try to graft these. I'm going to try to graft this ribbing pattern. It's going to be a minute. So the other thing that I actually think I might do, which I'll probably just end up doing, is putting the lifeline in like one row above where the rib is and just grafting it all together. I don't think anyone will notice. I won't notice probably. He definitely won't notice. No one else will notice if I just stockinette graft the whole thing together and the rib doesn't start. I mean, the rib doesn't even like line up with the base rib. It's not one of those ribs where you see the rib like transform. No, it's just separate. So if I stockinette graft here, I don't think it'll be that noticeable. That's my other option if I start looking and I find that grafting is going to be unattainable. But yeah, this This also is why I hate bottom up things. And in hindsight, so to be fair, I ran out of yarn because I initially made the size smaller for him. So I bought yarn for a size smaller, which I forgot about. I didn't forget about that. I've talked about it, but I forgot that I didn't buy enough yarn for the bigger size. So when I ran out of yarn, I was like, that's why I didn't buy enough yarn for the size that I actually ended up making. So I know, like, in hindsight is 2020, whenever I make any kind of garment with sleeves, usually, um, I'll get to a certain point, like usually around here, and then I'll stop. I'll put in like some barber cord and I'll knit the sleeves so that I know exactly how much I have left for the body. And then I'll just work the body until I'm either satisfied or I'm out of yarn. I do the same thing for like vests. I'll stop and I'll work the cuffing and then I'll finish, unless it's a really tiny vest or I'm not worried about running out of yarn, just so I can have an idea of how much yarn I have. So on the one hand, hindsight's 2020, I wish I would have made the sleeves first, but then again, I wasn't going to be able to convert this to top down with all of the detailing that's here. There's no way I was going to convert it to top down. But then I also didn't want to do, if I had done a provisional cast on and, you know, like here, worked the whole top and then finished the body, I'd run into the same problem where the ribbing here in the middle at some point is not going to look the same. So this is why I hate bottom up things, because I'm just never sure of how much yarn I have. So tomorrow I'm just gonna sit down, I'm gonna watch something something relaxing, peaceful and calm, and do some sweater surgery. And I will let you all know how it turns out in the next video. But yeah, this sweater. It'll be finished one day. One day it'll be finished. I was so excited last weekend to finish it. I was so excited. I was like, I'm going to finish the sleeve today. I'm going to seam it. I'm going to block it, and it's going to be done. Ran out of yarn. I went upstairs to get more yarn, and I saw that I only had one ball left. And I was like, oh no. I was like, is that how much yarn I have left? Because I was like, I don't think that's going to be enough. Anyways. Last whip. I don't even know if you're not even going to be able to tell. This is doesn't really look like much. It's not much, but it's something. Right? Kind of hard to tell. You can't even get an idea. This is Sleeve Vibes by Sachiko Bergen. This is also a Christmas present. This is for my boyfriend's other sister. I am knitting this using Filcolana Arwetta in the color black, left over from an Oslo hat that I made. And I am using a 4mm needle to knit this. So this is a like fingering / light fingering yarn on a 4mm needle. So it's pretty gapey. It's pretty airy and see-through, but not super see-through because it's black. This is a bolero. So all sleeves. It's so hard to tell what it is because I'm working short rows now. A lot of short rows. I love working short rows. I love working new kinds of short rows. This is a wrap stitch short row. I usually do German short rows. I'm a big German short row girl. This is a wrap short row, like a wrap and turn. Really exciting. Love learning new ways to do things. And I have not yet like resolved. They're not even double stitches, but I haven't gone back through and knit them, so I don't know how they look when they're unshort rowed compared to like a German short row. So I'm working short rows, and I was planning on, like many of us do, I was planning on switching to a longer needle cord when when it came time. But usually I switch to a longer needle cord, like a lazy girl way, by pulling out this needle really far, and then putting the new cord on the end here, and then just knitting a row with the new cord, and then putting this needle on the end of the new cord and taking this one out. Usually that's what I do. I don't ever really want to go through and like slip the stitches onto the needle. Too much time. And so I was going to do that, and then I realized I was working short rows, so I don't work I'm not going to actually go back to working in the round until the short rows are done. So the stitches are quite cramped on the needles, but again, it's a light fingering yarn, so it's really not that big of a problem. I'm almost done with the short rows. I actually just counted. I think I may have gotten off somewhere, but if that's the case, I'm not going to go back or anything, because this is really hard to see because it's black and it's like kind of open looking, so it's really hard to tell where stitches are. So if I mess up, I'm just going to do some magic and fix it. But I actually have no idea what the next steps are. I didn't even read this pattern all the way through. But at some point, I'm going to work sleeves. This whole project is just one big sleeve island. I did knit up a gauge swatch for this. I blocked it and everything. And what's actually really funny is that I recorded a video of myself swatching. I was inspired by Jackie is Making, who's another creator on YouTube. She did like a swatch and chat with me, like a knit and chat, but she just swatched. And I was like, that is so cute. I'm going to do that too. So I did it. The problem is I had worked 3 overnight shifts in a row. And in an effort to write, actually, this is what I do whenever I work like a couple of night shifts. What I do is I'll work the night shifts, and then on the morning of the last night shift, I get off, I come home, it's like 8 a.m. Usually I'll take a quick like hour-long power nap, force myself to get up and stay up the whole rest of the day. And then I'll go to bed early at 8, 9 p.m., sleep the whole night, and then boom, my sleep schedule back on track. So I was looking for things to do during the day after my 3 night shifts. I'd taken my power nap, and I was like, let me record a video. What a hot mess. What a hot mess. I was like delirious. I'd been up for like 24 hours with like an hour of sleep, probably longer. By the end of the day, I was not really, not that I wasn't making sense, but I was like going back through to edit it, and I was like, I cannot post this online. People are going to think I'm crazy. I looked unwell. I looked like someone who hadn't gotten much sleep and was not making a lot of sense. And I was like, I'm not going to post this online. Yeah, so I deleted all of that. But good news, I swatched for 3 projects. No one saw me do it, so it's fine. But moral of the story, I swatched for this, and my gauge was a little bit big. I want to say there were like 17 stitches in 10 centimeters, and this calls for 20 stitches in 10 centimeters. So a little big, but call me crazy. I was kind of waffling between what size to make, and since it wasn't for me, it was kind of hard to gauge what size to make. So I was between 2 sizes, so I decided to make the smaller size with the bigger gauge. So we'll see how it turns out. We'll see. I've also never made a bolero before. So this is a pretty bold thing to do, to make a gift for someone else that I don't really know their size, and the gauge is off, and I'm making something for the first time. Pretty bold. If it goes wrong, I'll just make her an Oslo hat. Let's be real. I can crank that out in a day or 2. So yeah. That's the sleeve vibes. I don't think there's anything else to say about it, especially because you cannot see what it is. So that is it. I don't have any acquisitions, which is good. That's good. I don't really need to be spending money. What I do want to talk about is future plans, because I'm having a little bit of a dilemma. A couple of things that I know my next cast-ons are going to be. I'm going to cast on the Lana Vest by Irene Lynn. I'm so excited to start this. I think I'm going to do a project vlog about it. Because I'm really, really excited to make this. I've been wanting to make it for a while, and that will be the next thing that I cast on. Once I finish the Rift sweater, we're casting on Lana Vest. The next thing I want to cast on is the Dad's sweater by Emily Curtis. This will be for my boyfriend's dad for Christmas. So just trying to get the Christmas knits out of the way. And then here's the thing that I need help with. Here's the thing. I have a ton of wool of the Andes left over, like a ton, like a whole sweater quantity if you add up all the different colors. I don't really want to go through and make accessories. They're taking up a ton of room in my stash, and I love the yarn, and the colors all go together. My initial plan was to make a scrappy striped sweater with it. The one I had in mind was the Roll With Me sweater by Autumn Becker. That was my plan. And then I could have a fun, like, thrift shoppy looking sweater. It was not going to be an elevated sweater. It was going to be like basically a sweatshirt. That was my plan. However, recently I've started thinking about how it would be nice to have like a little lap blanket, right? Like a little knitting blanket. I get cold a lot. So it would be nice to just have a blanket just to throw over my lap while knitting. So I was like, do I use all of this yarn and do I make like a sweet shop blanket that's just a bunch of different colors? It again would not be for the aesthetics. It would be a blanket with a purpose. So my question is, and I'm having a crisis, I don't really know which one to make, but I want to cast on sometime soon and get started on it because I want to start using up all this yarn that's in my stash. So I don't know. I think I'll put a poll up on my Instagram when I get closer to casting on. Both seem like great projects that I would love and get a ton of wear out of. Both seem fun to make. The sweet shop blanket definitely intrigues me a little bit more to make because I'm yet to make a blanket, and the construction seems interesting. And I've never done a Laura Penrose design before, so that pattern is calling to me more. But I don't know. Would love to know what you guys think. Would love some advice. I would just love your. Well, they're not unsolicited. I'm soliciting your opinions to help me, please. So that's my future plans and my dilemma. Yeah, and that's it for all the knitting. Usually at the end, I do like talking about my interests that are outside of knitting, like various media that I've been consuming. So if you're only here for the knitting and you want to head out, no worries. I won't be offended. Thank you for watching. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. Formula One, there's been no races recently, no news recently. Nothing new with Formula One, which is sad. Excited for race weekend next weekend. It's Austin, baby. Love the Austin Grand Prix. What else? In terms of books, finished 2 books recently, which is crazy. I finished Outlawed by Anna North. I know I talked about it in my last podcast. I don't think I'd finished it yet. I did not like it. I loved the plot. The plot was super interesting, very a good believable plot. I just felt like the writing was weak. The writing didn't really sell me. It wasn't good. The ending wasn't really satisfying. It was a fine ending. I'm happy with how the plot ended, but just the way it ended was just not satisfying. Um, I read it for my book club with my friends, and we had like such good discussion about it, which I love when we read books that like we have different opinions on, and that I love discussing things that I don't like more than discussing things that I do like. So we had like a lot of fun discussing it. It was like one of our better discussions. On my drive home yesterday from work, I finished It by Stephen King. I listened to audiobooks because I like listening to them when I drive, and then I like listening to them when I knit. And if I'm going to sit down and do a task that does not involve my phone, I'm going to knit. I'm not going to actually physically read a book. Sorry. So I finished the audiobook yesterday. The audiobook on Audible is literally like 48 hours long. And I've been reading this book for 2 years, listening to this book for 2 years. So I was so happy to finish it. I love Stephen King. I absolutely adore Stephen King. I love like horror, murder, gore. I love all of that. So obviously I love Stephen King. And he's like from Maine, and a lot of his books are based in Maine, and I used to live in Maine, so even more reason. Just love Stephen King. I love this book. It was really long, really weird at the end, but I just love how weird his stuff is and how creepy it is, and just such a satisfying ending, and just like the sense of nostalgia that he brings out in a lot of his books. And I feel like he's a very like long-winded writer. Like his books are so long, and a lot of times he'll write without really like not like advancing the plot, but you realize you've been like the whole chapter has gone by and it's just description, but he just captivates you. He's a phenomenal writer. I love him and I love this book. If you're in for a big read, if you want to like buckle down and like read a book, it was phenomenal. I need to watch the movies now because I have not seen the movies. I was holding off on watching the movies until I finished the book, but it's taken me like 2.5 years to finish the damn book. So now I can finally watch the movies. But yeah, loved it. Loved the book. And then TV shows, I'm watching Only Murders in the Building. I recently released the video reviewing all the knitwear from season 1 of Only Murders in the Building. I finished season 2, so I compiled all the knitwear that I want to talk about. I just need to research and go through it. So I've been holding off on starting season 3 because the video for season 1 that I made took so long. So I'm kind of dreading doing it for seasons 3 and 4. I already started season 2, but I'm kind of dreading doing it for season 3 and 4. And I don't want to overwhelm myself and give myself too much work. So I'm holding off on starting season 3 until later, which is just... But I want to talk about another YouTube creator that I discovered who I feel like does not have the following that she deserves. But I have found this girl on YouTube. Her name on YouTube is studyknits, and that tells you everything you need to know. She's absolutely hilarious. She makes really cool stuff, and I absolutely loved that I just like stumbled across her videos. If you're looking for a new YouTube to follow and you want to follow someone that's like hilarious and has like really dry humor, this girl is absolutely hilarious. Go check out Eva. Her name is Eva and she's hilarious. Go check her out. I will link her page below. And with that, I don't think I have anything else to talk about and I'm really tired. So I'm gonna go make a coffee and heat up some Chinese food and submit some forms that I should have submitted a couple of weeks ago. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Thanks for sticking around through this kind of hot mess of an episode. I feel like it was a hot mess. Anyways, let me know how you blend hand-dyed yarns for a garment and what I should do about my Wool of the Andes project dilemma. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. And I hope it's getting colder where you are, or if you're like way down south, I hope it's getting warmer where you are, like Southern Hemisphere. Happy fall knitting. Stay cozy out there. I'll see you next time.